Welcome back. Moving on to our second segment of today. As we mentioned in the beginning, we're talking about the mutual cooperation between Canada and Egypt, especially in the field of education. And we have seen many Canadian universities opening in Egypt recently. So here in the studio, of course, it's a great pleasure to have our dear guests. First, we have Mr. Sean McNabney, Vice Provost Academic Excellence and Transformative Learning, Sheridan College in Toronto. Welcome in Egypt.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. And Mr. Phil Hayes, Associate Registrar, Domestic and International Student Recruitment, Sheridan College, Toronto.
Good morning.
Good morning. So first of all, let me ask about how did you see or to figure out the cooperation between Canada and Egypt in the field of education?
Well, I'll maybe say that on behalf of Sheridan, we've been considering for some time how we might diversify and globalize our educational experience. So that's been part of our strategic plan for some time. And out of that plan became the realization of a strategy for engaging with different international partners. And I'll maybe let Phil speak to how that has been operationalized.
Yes. Typically, what's been done in the past with many schools is they'll align one program. They'll find that they have a program in common, and that one program may lead to another program at their institution. And so the relationship is really based on a program by program. What we've done is first of all, we looked at what were the markets, what were the global markets we wanted to be part of and really invest in. And Egypt is one of those markets that we have had students coming. We saw a lot of alignment, and then what we did is we looked at who were the partners in that marketplace. And so by working with a number of schools and those partnerships, what we've done is we've approached it on a more holistic level, and then really looking at all of the different areas that we can partner together with. So coming in and working with the partner school in Egypt is signing a memorandum of understanding and being able to open up then to explore partnerships not only in program articulation agreements, but opportunities for example, student exchanges, summer training programs, research, and a variety of other areas. So it gives us that stronger relationship from a partner-to-partner aspect.
Mr. Sean, what kind of competitive advantage, if we want to describe the Canadian curriculum?
Well, I think certainly from the perspective of Sheridan, as an exemplar of what I would consider to be academic excellence in the Canadian educational system for post-secondary, is really our commitment to innovative education. So all the way from how the curriculum is designed, through how it's delivered, through how we support our faculty in developing their own capacities, not only in their core disciplinary areas, but also as teaching faculty. So professors at Sheridan are extraordinarily committed to providing a world-class experience for students. And we've heard from some of our students from Egypt who have come to visit with Sheridan over the last couple of years that they have found that experience engaging with our faculty to be unlike anything they've encountered, and they seem to hunger for more. So we're trying to explore ways in which we might afford those possibilities.
Mr. Phil, talking about the University of Canada here in Egypt, tell me more about this idea, and was it challenging or as an investment, or tell me more, how do you see it?
Yes, it's been really, this trip alone has been very eye-opening for myself. This is my first time in Egypt as well as for Sean. And, but we do have a team, a tremendous team that is now operating in Egypt. One of our manager here for the region is Nagy Sleeb, and he and his team have been working on the ground with students. So we've had a presence here prior. And one of the things that I think that really helped to initiate a lot of this was some of the the feedback we had from students. So in this trip, we've been meeting with students that have attended summer training programs. We've met with students, graduates, and parents of those who have taken programs at Sheridan and are now working either in Canada or have returned here. And the feedback we've received has been tremendous. It's been quite inspiring. And you really see how that changes lives. Well, though that feedback has actually helped to us as we're working with our partner institutions on how do we see ourselves going forward. So I think that's been, there's that level of credibility and relationship already established, and I think we're building on that now. So even though it's our first time in Egypt, we have had this growing relationship in Egypt itself.
Well, talking about all the entities, educational entities, the Canadian ones in Egypt, how do you see, or how far it is the mere curriculum, Canadian curriculum, as if just I'm in Canada. Once I entered the school or the university, it is the same as Canada, the same way of delivering the message, the same idea of the IEP for the schools, for example. And this is something very, very important for the Canadian curriculum as well, the individualized educational program. And it is very, very successful, because we always say you can never put one exam for millions, for example. Mm-hmm. People are different. So how do you see this in Egypt?
So we've been very intentional for a long time at Sheridan to design curriculum that is rigorous, but also at the same time addresses the needs of each student in the individual way in which they can come to that curriculum in a meaningful way. So we've been having conversations with colleagues here at some of the institutions in Egypt about how we might do that. How does our curriculum complement the educational experience of the students in Egypt to date? So whether it be a case of a student begins 2 years of a degree at their program here in Egypt and then comes to Canada to finish that credential. We've really been discussing quite deliberately, how do we provide a seamless experience so that the students don't find a disconnect between what they've been doing here and then what they've been would be doing when they come to Canada. So there's a lot of discussions around what supports will look like for those students to help them in that transition. But as Phil was saying, we have had experience for a number of years where we've had Egyptian students coming to Sheridan for summer training programs and other things like that. And it's been extraordinarily successful. They find that the combination of the depth of experience in the field, whether it be broadcasting or applied health programs or business programs or what have you, with that core rigor partnered with the ability for the student to find their own way in that curriculum, to realize their own selves, for our faculty to appreciate and understand the needs of each student on an individual basis. They found that to be very, very transformative. And so we're really looking at the opportunity to not only afford those opportunities for more students from Egypt, but also the ancillary benefit that it brings to our domestic students, who are Canadian students, to interact from students from around the world and to really engage with their peers from Egypt.
Well, what is really, really important about the Canadian system of education is that it is not only taking care of the academic curriculum. It's very obvious that the Canadian system is taking very good care of building the character, the personality of the children, starting from, of course I'm talking starting from school or early ages. So this is very, very important. And Mr. Phil, you talked about the scientific research as well. So I would like to talk about this in relation to the fact that really it's not only about academic, but it is about how to be creative, how to have leaders in the future.
Yeah, I think one of the things that students are looking for when they're coming to Canada is they are looking to diversify their knowledge. They're looking for, what do I do the 70% of the time that I'm not in the classroom? How am I learning? How am I growing? And Sheridan College has great initiatives and services and programs that help students develop as adults. Canada has a very inclusive culture. And Sheridan definitely has a very inclusive culture. It's part of our mandate. And so students want that experience. They want to be interacting with students from not only Canada, but from other cultures, and they want to be exposed to other cultures. And then combine that with learning about, developing new both hard and soft skills that are transferable into different areas, whether it be leadership that you mentioned. That's one that is often quite popular. They're looking at those opportunities because we're also preparing them for careers. We're preparing them as they emerge as an adult for different types of careers and roles in society. So definitely we are producing, in the case of the example, these leaders of tomorrow. And so it definitely...
To be creative, thinking out of the box.
Definitely. Creativity. Actually, Sean, I think maybe when we talk about creativity, that's one of the hallmarks that Sheridan is known for.
Yeah, I want to talk about it from the point that how do you prepare your students to be creative? And sometimes you always say that during this critical age of our teenagers or students, still sometimes they don't know what do they want to do. I think this is something global.
That's global.
What to do, what do I have to do? But I know quite well how the Canadian curriculum is taking this very, very important, talking about preparing the personality, preparing for being more creative for the future, all these things. So tell us more about it.
Well, I think it really comes down to engaging with the students, providing them the experience whereby they can really reflect upon their own selves. So to use the phrase, know thyself. And a lot of it really comes from that. And at Sheridan, we've done very deliberate and very intentional work, whether it be what we call a reflective portfolio. We have a number of procedures and processes at Sheridan that help students really identify what did they learn from this experience. So not just the content, I've learned how to use a television camera or whatever it may be, but what did I actually learn? How has this changed the way I think about the world? How have I come to understand what my own strengths are, what my own areas of discomfort might be? How adaptable am I when situations are not like what I had expected? And it's really about bringing what traditionally has been a kind of implicit component of education and making it much more explicit at Sheridan. So students are not only reflecting upon, how well did I do there, but why did I do well, or why did I not do so well, or why was I comfortable, or why was I uncomfortable, and really sort of having those opportunities to really reflect and grow themselves outside of just their core area of study. And to speak of creativity, Sheridan's one of the few institutions in the world that actually delivers deliberate curriculum designed around fostering creative capacities. So students learn how to implement a variety of different strategies to enhance their own creative capacities and their abilities for innovation, but then also how to do that in the context of small or large groups as well. And since we've introduced that curriculum, which was about in 2014, the feedback from the students has been incredible.
I can describe it as knowledge is power. I've seen children and students of the Canadian curriculums, and I can see it's not only about books. It is what about they learned and they read, and this starts from really early childhood.
Yeah, I think the term that we often use that is being used quite commonly now in Canada is experiential learning. You learn through doing, and the act of actually conducting that type of work to see if this is something you really want to do. And you touched on it earlier. Students have more options now than ever before. And in fact, students are training for careers that, currently don't exist, but will exist in 5 years, right? And so that's as technology evolves and society changes, And as students have come out of this, out of the pandemic over the last few years, they're looking at, maybe some of their priorities have changed. We see students that have done an undergrad and have decided, I liked it, but it's not something I really see myself doing. But how do I build on the education I've had to then now maybe go into a different direction? And so those are the types of conversations we're having with perspectives. And we have a team now that can work with those students to help find the right program fit and plan for them. And that plan may start in Egypt. It may come to Canada. It may be done through online collaboration as well. There's so many different opportunities. So, yes.
Talking about the Canadian educational institution in general, I can describe it when it comes to inclusion, one of the best, if not one of the top societies and entities for inclusion, especially when it comes, for example, because as you mentioned, you have the IEP, the Individualized Educational Program. So this paved the way for more students to be attached to education system, even those with some learning disabilities or handicapped. They have a very good chance. I think Canada is the best when it comes to these people, because really it is the only society that I can describe with the fact or the terminology of inclusion. Both of you.
Sure, I'm sure Phil can jump in here a bit. I would say that at Sheridan we have a very robust and well-articulated strategy and framework for inclusion. So whether that be for students with disabilities or whether we're talking about inclusion of people of different cultural backgrounds or so on. So we have actually devoted significant amount of resources. We have an entire department that really is charged with ensuring that we're living up to those commitments. We have a number of other departments that really support students in significant ways through our student affairs area and counseling. We have an entire program that is run out of what we call our accessible learning office and so on. So to really help every learner come to Sheridan to be afforded the same opportunity and the same experience.
No, I agree. When students, are completing their secondary school and they've got their IEP, and they're not sure that, for example, it could be an accommodation where they just need extra time to write a test, or they need to write that exam in a separate room. We're not. What we're doing is we're accommodating that challenge to make sure that they're successful. And that's really at the core of what we stand for, is really being able to provide that individualized support for students. And what it does is you see those students really blossom into doing some amazing things because of that. So yeah, it's definitely coming in, developing the plan with them, and being able to support them with it.
And they feel that they're not being treated any differently than any other student.
Exactly.
And so that's one of the core drivers for us, as to make sure that our students sort of feel that everyone is welcome in exactly the same way.
When you take care of the child since early childhood, how far is this important, and its impact? Now I know, first, you are in the university or in the college, and you are receiving teenagers after finishing their high school. So how important it is taking good care of the child since early ages or childhood, and when he starts his new, let's say, university life?
It's an interesting question. I would say that there's a significant impact in how the student may have experienced kindergarten through all the way through high school. But I would say one of the things that we've really done over the last decade or more is really recognize that students come to Sheridan from across the province, from across Canada, and from beyond. And so what we've really had to do is be conscious of every student is going to come to us in a different place on their own, not only educational journey, but their own personal journey. And so we've had to really be mindful of how we engage with those learners where they are. So we meet them where they are. So you might have a student who's very advanced academically versus a student who's maybe not so advanced. But again, that sort of notion that all of the students, you know, come into Sheridan with an experience that is equitable and inclusive really is an imperative for us to recognize that not every student is going to come to us with the same background. So we have to be agile and nimble enough as an institution to be able to meet each of those students individually.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. I mean, the students coming in meet academic requirements, but there's all those other facets that we have to consider. And there are things that we'll also provide. When you were speaking earlier about with students and the support the parents give, parents, when students come to us, they are adults. We do treat them as adults. They're on their own. However, we do understand that parents are part of the equation, and they're their support network. So things that we will do, for example, for students that are incoming that are international, is we'll work to actually develop what we call a pre-departure and transitional supports. So we'll have sessions where we're actually having the student, but we'll also have the parents, because we want to look at, and this might be done about, let's say, 3 months prior to them leaving or coming to Canada. We'll give the parents resources and tips and tricks and best practices on how they can support their children as they go off on this new adventure. And international students are very brave. That's one of the things, is they're going to a different country where maybe they don't know anyone. So it's a very brave act. So we work with the parents often to help, because we understand all the work they've done, and we want to help support them so that they can support their children as they enter this new chapter.
Right. At the end, Mr. Sean McNabney, Vice Provost, Academic Excellence and Transformative Learning, Sheridan College, Toronto. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having
And
us.
Mr. Phil Heiss, Associate Registrar, Domestic and International Student Recruitment, Sheridan College, Toronto. Thank you very much for joining us. And we're looking, of course, for more cooperation between Canada and Egypt. Of course, in this respect, we all admire and respect the Canadian curriculum for all what you achieved in this field. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Right, and with this we come to the end of our breakfast show for today. Thank you all for joining us. Stay tuned for more coming up on RTV International.